In this section, we will talk about cascading. As we know, CSS are cascading style sheets. And from the style sheets we'll start today. As we already know, style sheets consist of CSS rules. The rule includes a selector that marks the element that we want to style, and in curly brackets we enter pairs of the properties and their values. Usually style sheets are added in a separate CSS file. In order to learn or try some solutions, you can also put CSS styles in a style tag in the head of the website, which we also often use in this course. But what is this whole cascading? These are the principles for the browser, thanks to which the browser can choose the appropriate CSS rule to apply to a specific element. Cascading also tells the developer creating a website which CSS rule the browser will choose. So knowing the principles of cascading, we can be sure of what will happen on our website. Which CSS rule will be chosen by the browser for a certain element. But let's start from the very beginning, from the initial values. If we create an element, for example a p tag, the browser, when rendering this element, creates a lot of properties for it and assigns the values to them. Here you can see a simple HTML document where I only place the p tag in the body with some text in it. You can see the preview of this project on the right side of the screen. Now let's open DevTools. Let's mark it with the selecting tool, our p tag. Let's go to the Computed tab right here. Let's scroll a little bit down. And let's choose this option, Show All, which will show us all the properties and the values for this element. Let's click it. As you can see, I didn't add any styles of my own. All I did is creating this p tag right here. But we can see the browser created for this element a lot of properties with their values. And those values are mostly the initial values determined in the official HTML and CSS specification, that all newly created elements are supposed to have these initial values for their properties. Those are the properties that the browser needs to render this element on our website. And it needs to assign appropriate values to these properties. We didn't specify any CSS rule to our p tag. All that was made by default by the browser. And most often the values for these properties are the initial values defined in the specification. The browser simply implement them for each element. But to understand cascading, we need to know how the browser creates the website. The first thing that happens in the browser is transforming our text file, the HTML file, into the document object model, also known as DOM or DOM. So the browser reads our HTML file, which is a plain text, and on its basis it builds the physical model of the website displayed in the browser. So the HTML file is not our website. It is an instruction for a browser, on the basis of which the physical website is built. Although the HTML document in a code editor looks very similar to the document object model in DevTools in the browser, remember that HTML is a plain text, an instruction, and the document object model is a physically rendered website by our browser. Each element of the physical page, so each element of the document object model, must receive a list of properties at the time of creation. And the values assigned to these properties will most often be the initial values, defined in official specification, and the same for all the elements. But above the initial styles, the browser can use its own styles, and it does by default for some elements. Each browser comes with its own CSS styles. We can think of them as the CSS style file the browser has. These styles are only applied to the certain properties for certain elements and override the initial values. As we can see in this example, the browser creates a body element in a document object model. It gives the body element the initial value for the margin property, which is 0. Then it loads the default browser styles for this element and overrides the initial values with them. Thanks to this, by default, the body element has a margin of 8 pixels, although in the specification, the initial value for this property for all the elements is 0. The browser styles override the initial styles because they are more important, and this is what cascading is all about. The browser determines which rule is more important and which one should be applied. Here is a second example of how the browser styles override the initial styles. As we know, the initial value for the font weight property for all the elements is normal. However, the browser overrides this value and changes it to bold for selected items. For example, for the headings like H1. The browser styles are introduced for readability of the websites without entering your own CSS styles. Highlighting the headings or separating the paragraphs with margins allows you to read the text on the website freely, even if its creator did not take care of its appearance. Without them, everything on the website would blend into a dense mass of hardly readable text. The next step for the browser is to check whether the website has implemented CSS styles from its creator. If such styles have been imported to the website, the browser uses them. Moreover, according to the cascading principles, such styles are the most important and override all the other styles. What we can see in this example, the browser will take the initial styles into account, then override them with its own styles, and then override its own styles with the website creator's styles. This is exactly what it will look like. The initial styles will be crossed out as the browser styles are more important. The browser styles will be crossed out as our own styles are even more important. But note that in our own styles, we have two different rules matching the same element. How did the browser choose the last rule to apply to the website? Cascading is also responsible for this, and this is what we will learn in this section. But first, let's move on to some practice, so I could show you what I just said.